Good afternoon. My name is Jerome September, and I'm the Dean of Student Affairs here at the University of the Witwatersrand. I am, this afternoon, delighted to welcome you to this event, which will start shortly. In starting, I would just like for us to take a moment of reflection, to be followed by a moment of silence, as one of our students, Asitandile Zozu, a 20-year-old first-year student at WITS, was tragically killed last night. This, of course, came to us as a complete shock, but it once again highlights the challenge we face as a country, the challenge we face as a university in respect of gender-based violence. The time has come for this to end. We cannot continue with hashtags. We cannot continue along the lines of having to shout, to scream, to cry, and to be angry. It has to stop. And so I ask that we, as a WITS community, that we once again, that we commit ourselves to ending gender-based violence, not in our lifetime, but today. And so I ask that each one of us, that we do the very best that we can to bring an end to this. To Asitandile, known as Kwasa, to her family, to her friends, to those who are in her classes, those who are in her residence, our deepest condolences. We hope that you will, with time, that you will find comfort, that you will find strength to be able to continue. But I do want to ask us all again to commit ourselves to ending gender-based violence. I ask that we now please observe a moment of silence in memory of Asitandile. Thank you. We will now begin with the rest of this webinar this afternoon, the purpose of which is to connect you as WITS students with young people, with leaders in our society who's busy walking their own path, making a difference in the spaces where they find themselves. And so we bring them into the space through a webinar series for them to share their leadership journey with you. But it's to share a leadership journey around what is authentic, around how they walk their own journey, as you young people would say, walking in their own lane. And so I am delighted that we have with us today someone who is doing amazing things, Nono Sekgotho, and I will formally introduce her just now, but let me just call in a wonderful program director for this afternoon, whom you all know, I'm sure, Buhle. Buhle, over to you to take us into the formal program.
Thank you so much, Dean. Good afternoon to the WITS community at large. I am so honored to be the program director this afternoon. I would like to also say that we start our program on a very, very difficult note today. However, I would like to encourage each and every single student that is with us to seek the space of enlightenment, to seek the space to be encouraged and to lead within their various spaces. I would like to thank the Dean of Student Affairs, Mr. Jerome September, for this program about leading authentically and these conversations, which I think are so important for the community of WITS, what we are going to be doing in the different sectors that we are part of, in the different ventures that we would like to take through in life, whether be it from the classroom into the sporting sector, the agricultural sector, whatever interests you. I think that no matter who speaks on the platform, I think it's so important to take those lessons that they have used and to apply them to the different things that may interest us. I think that we can have a very constructive conversation, and I'm looking forward to it so much. We have an absolute star with us, which Mr. Jerome September will be introducing, Nono Sekgotho, who is doing absolutely a lot within the agricultural sector and trailblazing, a force, I tell you. So I would just like to do some housekeeping rules. If you would like to direct any questions towards Nono that I can relay, or even go on a live question, please do use the tab of Q&A. Don't post the question on the chat room so that I can see them directly and then I'll ask Nono. I'm super excited for this, and I would like to say that she is, before everything else, as we know, Nono, she's a commercial farmer and an entrepreneur and an international youth in agriculture and award-winning South African civil society leader. And she works to empower women and young farmers within the country and within the region. So I'm so proud and I'm so honored to be introducing her to come onto the platform. So I do wish that you sit back in the comfort of your home and relax and engage with us.
Okay, let me come in and just do a formal introduction, although I think, Buhle, you did cover what needs to be covered. Nono Sekgotho is an agriculturalist. She's MD and founder of GrowthShoot Inc, which is a company that's finding innovative and sustainable ways to empowering youth in agriculture, focusing on primary agriculture. GrowthShoot runs a farming enterprise in Senegal, Free State, farming with beef, cattle, grain, and rabbit production. Nono is manager of the African Leadership Academy for Agribusiness Network. She's a former tax practitioner. She was a chairperson of the African Farmers Association of South Africa, a former member of the Presidential Youth Working Group, managing director of Mokolobane Farmers Enterprises, an investment specialist. She has qualifications from the University of the Free State, from the University of Pretoria, and also has done some work with the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management. She is a South African, a proud South African. Some of her volunteer work include being a youth representative on the African Farmers Association of South Africa, and that's part of the National Executive Committee, a committee member of the World Farmers Organization. This is particularly for member of the Women's Working Group, and interestingly also a director at the Morris Isaacson Center for Music. She is an advisor, she is a policymaker, she is an activist, she is a woman doing big things in her lane, and it's my pleasure to welcome onto the platform Nono Sekgotho. Welcome, Nono.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be part of this opportunity. Thank you so much, Dean. This has been an honor. I mean, just listening to you, it's like I'm listening to you talk about somebody else. But firstly, I would like to just thank you for this great opportunity. And Buhle, your introduction was also very humbling. Just to take the lead from where Dean started, it's really important for us young women growing in this society where we have such difficult issues that we have to deal with. It's important for us to be aware of how do we become part of this journey and how do we protect ourselves in this environment. And so just to put a little bit of emphasis on that, I would just like to, share something that I hold dear to myself, especially around the discussion of gender-based violence. If you think about it, it is such a difficult discussion to have. It is such a big topic for anyone to have. If you think of the country, the country is still dealing and trying to find ways of how can we actually solve this big issue. So who am I? Who am I? And a lot of times that's what we can feel. We can feel like we're too small to have, this discussion. But this is the message that I would like to put across, is that it's all our responsibility. Young, old, male, female. The discussion is ours because we are all affected. Either we know somebody, either we are part of it, or either we're inflicting pain on others, or whether we're getting inflicted. And for me, we cannot, request others to control themselves. There's no way we can control other people. My closing remark in this space is that we as women need to really listen to the voice that's inside of us. We know when we're not in the right spaces. And sometimes we feel bad about it because we know that we've made those decisions. But I urge you all to keep making sure that you listen to the voice inside of you so that it can lead you and guide you to the right place. That is my contribution to that discussion. As I said, it's such a big topic. But for you to be able to listen to that voice, you need to practice it. There's so many voices out there. We've got friends, we've got family, we've got those we think we love, those we think love us. The voices are many. How do you make sure that you're always listening to what's inside of you so that you can take care of yourself? I'll close it at that. And it's actually interesting that I'm using that analogy because to me, that's actually the base of who I am. The one thing that anyone will tell you who knows me is that is one thing I think I've mastered in this world, is to listen to the voice inside of me. I'm very honored, this afternoon to actually be called a leader. This is not what I planned for. I didn't, go out thinking, one day I'm going to be a leader, so I need to do ABC. I didn't. I really followed what's inside of me. But the reason I'm a leader isn't because I'm saying I'm a leader. I've had invitations from other people who call me a leader. So hence, leadership isn't really about me. So when I look at my journey and try to understand, how did I get here? How did I get to be a leader if I didn't even plan? Are leaders born, or is it something that, comes as you go along? I don't know. But in my journey, I've been able to pinpoint very specific places where I know I learned something that I can continuously learn and execute and learn and execute and get better at it. And then eventually I find myself here. I'm not perfect, but I know I have learned lessons that I still implement till today. So in totality, because leadership is such an important topic here, I've made sure that I'm going to walk away having left you with very 4 words or themes, so to speak, that really guide what I think and believe leadership is to me and what has led me here. So the first one is accountability. The second one is responsibility. The third one is pride and respect, kind of is like one in one. And then the other one is potential for impact. And I'm going to share very quick stories about how I learned those and why they made so much sense for me. And that's why they are part of who I am today. And I believe that a lot of those you will always see in the work I do, in the way I interact with people. You'll be able to pinpoint one of those 4. So let's start with my school journey. You know, anything before school, whatever you're learning, you kind of probably forgotten, or it's subconsciously somewhere. But when I was in high school, I remember a lesson that I learned very well. And till today, it's still very strong. So the lesson I learned was consequences. That, it came from home. My parents are very big advocates of what you do is, will contribute to what your results that you get. So your actions are very important. And so just to give you a little story, everyone always thinks like, I'm this goody now, busy talking to governments and doing all these great things. When I was in high school, some people didn't think so, But to the point that there was still some sort of leadership inside of me. And that's what led me to be a prefect. I was a prefect at school. So obviously, if you're a prefect, that means there's some potential in you. But I was probably the only person at my school till today who has been made a principal and that got taken away from them. Now, if someone had to tell me then that I would have been able to learn a lesson out of that, that was not what I thought. I thought I was, I needed to be vindicated. I needed to defend myself in the actions. But it was a really good lesson, is that your actions have repercussions. And if you don't take that value to say, depending on the actions that you put into play, the expectations that you get after that, you really need to be thoughtful about your actions. So accountability has always been a theme in my journey, because I can't blame things that are happening around me when I am part of that. How do I find ways to, even if you're in a situation where things don't go right, how do you look back and say, but my part and my contribution to that result was A, B, C. And once you can do that, you'll be able to learn from those mistakes. So that was it. So my accountability was really learned in that little harsh moment of realizing that it was all my fault that I lost that opportunity, the opportunity that I got. So that's my first one, accountability. The second one, responsibility. So I carried on. As you can see, if you have a naughty streak in you, it will still keep following you somehow. So when you get to university, balancing of having a good time, having friends, and then studying, the most important thing we learn, right? And trust me, I loved a good time. I'm very good with people. I made friends. I loved university. But the responsibility that I had to learn came in the fact that two things I had to really work at to be able to be responsible: discipline and self-mastery. Discipline means you literally need to take yourself into your room to go and study. That only you can do that. Discipline, the ability for you to be able to start something and see it through to the end. Those were the little things I learned. And I really had to think about it. I had to be able at some point to say, how do I stop wanting to have fun the whole time so that I can do what I know, what I came here to do? I had a responsibility for my family, because my family have obviously funded me to be here. I had a responsibility to make sure that my future actually is going to be successful because I have this opportunity. I had a responsibility to myself to make sure that I'm disciplined. And self-mastery came in the form of understanding what I'm good at and where I'm not good at. How do I improve, or how do I push harder on the other side, which is what I'm strong at? But all of these take practice. And a lot of things that if you had to ask a lot of friends that I have, friends, family, they'll tell you, Nono is very disciplined. But I learned to be disciplined. I wasn't born disciplined. I just told you. But I know my responsibility to what I need to do for myself and for the people around me. And for me, responsibility, as I said, has really guided how I am a leader. Then I went off to, I finished university. I was disciplined enough to get my degree, and my mother was so happy. My mother was extremely happy. I think at some point she was not really sure if I would make it, but she knew I had the brain, so I just needed to be disciplined. And when I went into my new life, which is, the new journey of career and work, what was I going to do? I remembered self-discipline, self-mastery then came into play again. And that has to do with being responsible for myself, and then also making sure that I do the right thing for myself. Firstly, you have to start to make sure that you are doing the right thing so that you're able to contribute in the right way. And how I learned it in my first job is that I actually looked for a job that would accommodate me. I thought about what are my biggest pluses? What can I sell when I go out there that I know people will be sure I'm going to buy that? Two things. I had a knack for finance and I had a knack for people. As I told you, I'm good with people. I get along well. And my career, which I didn't even know about, that's where I started in financial advice and investments. And for me, it was to use those very two skills that I had. I was speaking to people and empowering people about information that I found very easy, but I could see the spark and how I was helping people and information, because finance, as we know, finance is such a difficult thing. It's so important for all of us, but yet we know how difficult it is. And I found my way of just doing the right thing at that time, right? Having focused on making sure that I'm right. And I would leave, boardrooms feeling so good because I had literally empowered a group of women around the table, which I would have never thought about. And what that does for you, well, what it did to me is then started building up my confidence. So that it's almost like I was literally building on how it is that I was going to be this leader. You first start with yourself doing the right thing inside, following what is your passion, what makes you comfortable, what makes you feel good. And then you're able to do the same when you're communicating and doing your work. So sometimes it's obviously not that easy to find, the work that you always think is the best, but finding a way to listen to that voice inside of you that tells you what is the right thing to do at that moment will lead to further success. That is how I see it. Then I moved on, and interesting enough, so when I was in finance, for me to move into the agricultural sector, which is where I am now, it was the most odd move. I was never going to be a farmer. I never knew anything about farming. And my father eventually, gave me this opportunity when he got into farming. He was like, come help me. You've already got a skill that I can use, finance, right? I can use finance anywhere, whether I'm in agriculture, any business. So I actually had, picked a great degree. I can work anywhere. And so when I got into agriculture, I had to remember the rest of my the other two guiding principles and themes. Pride and respect. That one's an interesting one because coming into an industry where nobody knows you, you know nothing about the industry, you really have to humble yourself. You have to humble yourself so that you can have the opportunity to learn, so that people can actually bring you into them. And respect for anyone you come across is the most important. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter what level they work. And the first level of respect I had to give was to the workers on the farm. Now, I got to the farm with people who were working and they had no level of education that I had. And I had to arrive to come be their bosses. Who am I? I know nothing about agriculture. Yet I had to come and be a boss. How was I going to go get that right? Respect. I showed the respect to those people because I knew that they were the key to my success. And recognizing that anywhere you go, even if it's somebody who really, is well accomplished, as I said, I've met the Pope. I never knew I would ever do that. I've met the Pope, I've met the president, both presidents of South Africa. I've met the ministers, I've met and the level of respect that you give to people, as people, not as their title, it really shows. And so for me, that is something that I carry with me everywhere I go. Respect. And because once you respect people and they provide you the space, they will open their doors for you. They will teach you. They will take you on. They will, as they have me. As I said, I knew nothing about agriculture. Yet I have a following of a group of about 9,000 people on Facebook. Those people think that I have something of value. Do you understand what I mean? So for me, it's all that you see as you're interacting with people, as you build relationships in the industries you work in the little spaces you work in, because you never know where those relationships will take you. And that gives me pride, knowing that I didn't get here alone. I didn't make my career. I leveraged off relationships. I leveraged off people I got to know, the skills that I employed. So it wasn't just me. And that to me gives me pride. The fourth one, the potential for impact. Potential for impact for me has come in a way that I would have never thought about it. Like I said, I didn't plan to be a leader. I didn't plan to be in farming. This career kind of, I always say it found me. But that potential for impact, it's something that I kind of thought about, especially this morning when I hadn't actually voiced this before. When I started actually, realizing, what's happening in agriculture, I wanted to share this information with everyone because I never knew it. So little people know about the benefits and the immense opportunities that are in agriculture. Don't get me wrong, they're not easy, but there's a lot. There's a lot happening in this sector. And I just needed to connect with people. And so I started Facebook. And then, when I was on Facebook, I'll speak about my experience. And next thing I was sitting on stages. But the potential for impact came when I realized the number of people who just wanted to congratulate me. I mean, to be quite honest, I didn't even think I was doing that much. I was just learning. I just got here. But yet, the messages and the pure, just such surprise. I mean, this invitation from University of Witwatersrand is an example of it. So my thing about potential for impact is that you never know, the little work that you're doing that is right, who it's going to affect and who it's going to actually, contribute to. And that is one thing that I've learned about real leadership. Real leadership, you are doing the right thing. And when you see the results, it will be that impact that you're going for. So it is quite tragic for me right now in this space where, leadership across the continent is a difficult thing for us right now. It's difficult because we don't have the examples. We don't have that many examples that we really should see. And I'm not saying I am the it of it. All I'm saying is, I know that I want to be that in the next 20 years, that I would have people still looking up to me in the little small things that I'm doing. Because if there's a lot of us, all those little small things will really add up. The one thing I would like to also touch is the fact that I'm a woman. The dean also mentioned something, agriculture, it being such a difficult space. And to be quite honest, this is, generally most of the industries is that they're run by men and, especially older men, especially non-white men. So I'm literally the opposite of everything. I was young coming into the industry, female and Black. But the dean mentioned something that was interesting that I'd like to share with you, is that it doesn't matter who you are, where you are. There's always an advantage that you have. I came in, as I said, I'm Black, I'm young, I'm all of those, yes. But the advantage that I had is that I was eager to learn. That was my advantage. And that's why the doors were open for me. So never forget the way to see yourself and find the advantage that will enable you to get further. Don't be caught up by your circumstance. That's not the end. And in closing, agriculture, having been a difficult thing, especially for women, leadership in agriculture for women is obviously a very closed community. There's very few of us. And if you remember that, you know, ownership of land is a big thing in agriculture. And for women, for years and years, it has been, you know, inaccessible. You know, land has not been accessible. And even currently, policies are still not up to scratch to enable women to access land the way they need so that they can have a fair opportunity to contribute to this great sector of ours. And this is not just a South African issue. It's very global, and especially on the continent. But lastly, as I said, I could go on forever. I told the guys. The one thing that I'm also very excited about is the potential for youth impact in this sector. You know, food security is number one. Without food, we're nothing. And if we're not having youth participate to make food for us, we have no future. So the work I do has literally been dedicated to ensuring that we find ways to support and bring in youth to come and participate in the sector, understand it. And that's why I have a partnership with African Leadership Academy. They are dedicated to finding opportunities of growing young leaders across the continent. And my contribution is focusing on how do we then make sure that out of that group, we still have those that are going into agriculture, and eventually they will succeed. Because without that, as I said, there's no future.
Thank you so much, Nono. That was so informative. And I think there's so much as young people that we can take away from that. There's a couple of questions that I have and comments directed to you. Please do remember, to everyone who is tuned in, please get into the Q&A and then type in your questions. Given Gobeni says, I am so inspired with the leadership of the sister here. More specifically, that leadership was inspired here by her own struggles, not with speeches that we receive today. So that's from Given, saying that they really, really appreciate, your journey and learning from it. What I would like to ask as well, there's a question that says, how would you advise, young people, we love planning. We don't necessarily know if those plans are going to be seen through. However, we need to be disciplined. You mentioned discipline, and I just wanted to find out, how can we self-master? How can we be disciplined in a time of uncertainty, such as COVID? This period for a lot of young people and for families, livelihoods in the country, we are uncertain about a lot of things, but how can we use that space, to self-master and to discipline ourselves?
Yeah, it's a tough one, but so necessary, because we're all in it. We're all faced with the same issue. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you're a big business, whether you're small, whether you have no work. And for me, I think it's really understanding, what can you really do right now? For those that are in school, for instance, you can really just focus on making sure that you pass. So a lot of times we think that the things that we need to do are far out there, and we have to make sure we're doing this. I'm telling you, if you focus on what is on the table right now, then you will see yourself on the other side. But I also think it's important to think outside of the box. If you are worried and nervous and and a little bit uncertain, go on the net, read and understand, what are other people doing? I mean, this is the whole world is going through this. You'll be so surprised to understand little businesses that are coming out of this, little ideas that you can think about, little things you can learn. Like for instance, maybe being able to use these kind of platforms and actually going and selling this service to your group of friends. That's already something that people are literally, kind of doing right now. And I think for me, it's really around exploring. These are the times for exploring. You can't sit and be complacent, because once COVID is done, there'll be other challenges to deal with. And I think it's about preparing, about how do I prepare myself today so that tomorrow I can at least have, maybe even different opportunities.
Yes. Nono, you said something about, in fact, we know that you came from the finance sector before you went into agriculture. And a lot of the time, sometimes we land up in spaces that we've never expected ourselves to be. There is a question that says that, hello, Nono, from Moteng Moseri. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Please do forgive me. Hello, Nono, what advice would you give to women interested in agriculture, but with no background?
So I always tell everybody that there's so many things to do in agriculture. Everybody thinks I need to be a farmer. That's the immediate thought we get. Agriculture, farming. That is one of the things to do. If you are interested in agriculture, you can actually provide a service to a farmer. So for instance, I was an accountant, right? That's what I have. My first degree was in accounting. If I wanted to be a farmer, I continued to be an accountant. So I didn't have to change myself to go be a farmer. So a lot of times I tell everybody that I'm a farmer because that's where I get my salary from, but I'm actually still a financier, and I'm still, because that's what I do at work. I'm not outside, shoveling, and that's not my strength. So it's really about understanding what can you do right now when you get into the sector, and that's how you need to understand how to get into agriculture. It's not just about farming. There's a whole value chain that enables you to support farmers, buy from farmers, help farmers sell, help connect them to markets. There's a part where you can work at a business that is creating food, right? A business that is actually in a factory, that's in agriculture. That's making food. Grocery stores, those are in agriculture. Those are agricultural businesses, but they have a whole suite of services that we can provide, HR, and it's specialized. So my point is, your inexperience of being in agriculture, you have to understand what skills can you go with when you get into agriculture. And I think it's really around understanding what can you do to start. Because if you do want to be a farmer at some point, it's going to take a journey to get there.
Yes. No, also, within the country that we live in, we have an issue with access within spaces. We have an issue of land, such as you had mentioned. So as a Black woman in South Africa who wants to get into the space of agriculture, we have issues of land, we have issues of funding. How did you go about your own journey into making things possible from, working for your father? Nkosi Ngewu says that, how did she manage to secure funding to start her farming journey?
Yeah, so for my journey is really interesting. I arrived on the farm to work with my father, who had secured his previous investments, which he used to buy the farm, but he also accessed it through government programs. And those are not very easy because there's a lot of us that want access to that. So I always say the journey that I took to try and understand how do you make this work, and that's why I developed my business GrowthShoot. I literally put together the rabbit business is mine. I started from scratch. I put together research. I try to understand the market. I try to understand how to access funding, and it is not easy. I won't lie, it is not easy, but it's not impossible. So we're hoping that in time there'll be a lot more appropriate funders that support, because a lot of the funding that is actually available, like if you go to the bank, it's still very expensive. So access in that space is not flexible, and that's not the kind of funding you would want anyway when you're starting a business. So for me, the opportunities that I've seen, having worked at AFASA, is that I've worked with organizations like SAB Foundation, Masisizane Fund. So a lot of them are corporate businesses that support enterprise development or social investments. And they are the ones that are providing this funding that can actually help startups. So for me, it will be around really looking out for such opportunities, because they come at different times throughout. So that's why you need to be connected amongst people who are in the industry, so that when information flows, you are there, because these are not things that are, programs are not available all the time. So Pick and Pay sometimes may have a program that is supporting, and then if you're in their network, you may get access to funding. So for me, I've seen that that's the best form of funding to access, especially growing businesses when you're starting.
All right. So within the space of actually getting into, networks and searching for funding. For students, sometimes we do not exactly know how to navigate those spaces and how to even get informed. So what would your advice be in terms of informing ourselves before we look for funding, before we get into the industry itself? How do we enable spaces as students to get into, to move into the direction that you have gone?
So if you're focusing on agriculture for now, all I'm going to tell you to start is go look at Agrijobs. Agrijobs, www.agrijobs.co.za. So just as a thought is that there's so many ways. I mean, you can Google and sometimes you get so much information. But like I've seen that on like social media for me was an absolute brilliant place to start. There's a lot of actual agribusinesses right now, young people who are in agribusinesses, all sorts of agribusiness. And there's lots of groups everywhere. Now for me, when you're starting, get in all of them, because all you need to do is just understand information. I always tell everybody that when you arrive in like a place where you know nothing, any information is relevant until you start understanding it. So just absorb, kind of like a child, right? A child doesn't know what they're learning. They just take it in. Next thing you see the child speaking. Oh my gosh, the child knows that. Do you get what I mean? So for me, it's just find ways to connect with those that are speaking about agriculture, that are talking about it, sharing, posting, so that you can start understanding it. And eventually you'll find the right people who will answer the question, the right question. You can join our group as well. It's called afasa.youth-national. So that for me, it's really around just get connected, because only once that information is flowing through your consciousness will you be able to sift through the lot of information. But at the beginning, it's never going to be easy. You've got to go through the schools, just like we said. We all go through it too.
Yes, no, definitely. I'm going to take maybe 2 or 3 more questions. The questions are just pouring in, so everyone wants to hear from you. Nono, on the side of how Africa, is perceived, Sikhulile Dube has a question, and it says, having noted that Africa is becoming charity-centric, what would you advise? What would you give leaders in entrepreneurship spaces to change this narrative of dependency, especially in food production? So I would suppose how to push ourselves more, how to, enable ourselves, although we need to get into certain spaces, how do we not become that dependent?
Yeah. The interesting thing about agriculture that I've really honestly just understood is that certain dependencies are vital. So dependencies between very specific organizations like the government and the industry, that dependency is vital, because we need to make sure that regulations continue to adjust to what is needed. So if the relationship between government and the industry is not strong, there's going to be problems. And unfortunately, what's happened on the continent for me is that what's happened is a lot of the governments are like this with the industry. So they're not together. And guess what? When there's gaps, that's why you get all these donor fundings, because they see the gap. Now, once we have donor funding and all of those NGOs that really can help really well, I mean, they do good work, don't get me wrong. But if the government, then it's almost like the government then relaxes, right? And then our people at the industry now gets dependent to these other external organizations. And I think that to me, the way I see it, that's what's happening. South Africa, for instance, is a very different sector, especially in terms of how well agriculture was established to be where we are today. The government and industry were one. And that is why we see the large agricultural businesses that we have today, because that relationship was very strong. But right now, it's slowly just not as strong. And a lot of us are falling through the gaps. So a lot of new entrances into the industry are now falling through the gaps instead of, being taken on by this relationship that was built from back in the day. And so I think, to me, that's what the leaders need to really, really pay attention to. They really need to understand the importance of staying close to the industry so that they can make the right policies to support the industry.
You know, we can't avoid the conversation and the tension between the issue of land. Lunga Gadala says here, with the current political climate, like land expropriation, etc., do you see any, you know, possible challenges within the industry, and where can we see ourselves going with that? Because I think that it's a very big, you know, debate within South Africa, and it's important for Black people in agriculture.
Yeah. So, I mean, land is such a big issue because it's not really, you know, the agriculture is the business part of it. You know, the reason why our people do not have land wasn't really about business. It was about our heritage, where we lived and our livelihood. And so it just so happens that that's what you do on the land, right? So accessing the land allows you to, you know, live, you know, we're able, you know, we bury our ancestors on the land. Land means a lot more to us. It's not just about agriculture and business. And so the tension that we've found ourselves today is that a lot of the land that was taken has been built into really good agricultural businesses, you know, agricultural farms that are generating food for our people, which is important. And so the transferring of land in that aspect has come with very great responsibilities that have not been met. And so we found ourselves, you know, a lot of us Black farmers who had access to these farm lands, not just land. We're talking about big commercial businesses. Having an access to a business and then not having skills, access to finance, and all these other things that I keep talking about, that relationship. What do you think the result is going to be? So a lot of work has not been done correctly in terms of doing the transfer. That is really like how we've kind of experienced it. But the importance of land is not just about agriculture. You know, I can only speak about it because that's the space I'm playing in. But there's communities across the country who are really, who really have, you know, land has just been more than just this business that we're trying to, you know, have access to. I hope that answers the question.
Yes. You know, this session it's jam-packed with questions. I did say I would take 2 or 3 more, but I think I can squeeze just one more in if that's fine with you, Nono, before
I think there's still a bit of time, yes.
Yes. There's a question, what role could banks play within the future to support small business owners and to support people that are getting into the industry? Because sometimes, you know, you have the ideas, you are equipped, and you be enabled. So what role could the banks play within that sector?
Yeah, so, you know, in my experience is that banks would need to change their products. That's the main thing, because their products are not built a lot of times to support small starting businesses in our space because of the risk that is, you know, inherent to the business, the complications, just a lot of things. And so, and also the business model of a bank isn't, you know, to understand your situation too much. It's to really make money. Yeah. And so if we're not going to be able to make money for them, it's going to be a different, so they would have to change their business models. And so I don't know how realistic it is, but there are sections of banks like enterprise, they'll have an enterprise development support. So then they will try and actually, you know, go that extra mile to go and understand, like, hey, what's happening in this space? How can we adjust our funding? But the banks, I think for me, their role would be to really just understand and just go that extra mile and actually have a segment of their money that is dedicated to that. It doesn't have to be all of it, you know? So for me, that's how I think it works.
Yes. There is a wealth of wisdom that you've given us. And I just want to, you know, to find out from you, you know, you're a powerhouse, you're a force. Where does that all come from? Is there a support system? You know, where does all of that come from? Where do you source that power?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in all honesty, the one consistent thing in my life has been my family. You know, everything else, I mean, even my journey on self-belief has been,
yes.
But my family's support has been consistent. Even when I was naughty.
There's that.
I mean, even I remember the advice they would give me. The advice my parents have always given me, said, no, you are here to live this life for you. You know, so at the end of your life, you must be able to look back and be happy with what you have done. And that's something that always continues to just, you know, it's there with me wherever I go. When I choose work, when I choose partners, when I choose friends, when I do anything, you know, that to me is really around remembering. Hence, I started with that whole thing, that listen to that voice inside of you, you know. It's not always right. I don't know. But if
sometimes you can be misled.
Exactly. So that's why I'm like, if you practice listening to it, you may be able to tap into the right wavelength. And I think for me, that's really been the support system for my family, my friends. And I said that the respect that I think I have given to people that have not been in my life for very long, I can already see the support that I get when I'm around people that I'm around.
Yes.
So the support system is really like strong.
Yeah. You know, as Black women, you know, within different sectors and spaces and fraternities, I just wanted to find out from you, Nono, what would you say to other women out there to breaking those glass ceilings? We don't want any caps or ceilings over that we would like to do, or over the spaces that we would like to enter into. What would you say, you know, in pushing ourselves and getting within those spaces, you know, and navigating ourselves, because we are constantly challenged by various issues that we face, not just being a woman, not just being Black, being in South Africa, you know, lack of that.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, you know, I can only speak on my little life and how much I've done. But I think, you know, even when I watch, you know, women who are in business and doing really well. I mean, there's a woman, Mom Judy Dlamini, who at the moment, you know, having a really good connection and trying to understand, like, how are they navigating? And I'm telling you, they are still having the same challenges that we do. So it doesn't matter at which level you get. There's no way you're going to get to like the top and be like, oh, I finished with problems, now I'm at the top. No. And so, but I think what happens is when you keep pushing, it makes you stronger. It really does. Your resilience becomes stronger over time. So don't give up. That's why I would keep saying, don't forget that voice inside of you. If you feel like you've made a decision that doesn't seem right because of what's happening around you, don't give up. Try again. Think of a different way of tackling something. Connect with people. You know, relationships that we build in the business world, you'll never know where they'll take you. And just having a voice of someone who can share your struggle really provides a great feat. You know, like, I mean, I personally currently have a very good friend, Mbali Noko. I mean, we as farmers in this struggle do really well in the way we build each other, because we're both having, you know, tough times here and there. And for me, it's really around remembering that it doesn't matter what it is you're going through, you are not the only one. You know, a lot of times we look at other people and be like, yo, that one had it easy. No, they didn't. So I think we need to keep remembering that. Then you'll be able to keep going and keep pushing and keep striving, because it has to come from inside of you.
Yes, and I think I can't disagree with that. I think as the best thing that we have done for ourselves is constantly be in partnerships and constantly be rooting for each other. We're almost out of time, but I would like to find out, is there any last comment that you would like to leave us with today?
Yeah, well, I've been so, you know, I'm really thankful for this opportunity. Dean, thank you for seeing me and, you know, my work. Thank you for the team, Tembi, Rachel, and everybody else. This has been really, really a good experience for me. And lastly, to those who really have just made time to be here, I really hope I've taken, if you can take one thing from here, I've given you tons and tons to go away with. And I think, I do have, as I said, on the group, come join me on the group if you're interested about agriculture. I also try to just, if you want to reach out on a DM on Facebook, I'm available. So try find a way, but make sure I'm your friend. But all in all, please, you've got to always, my consistent message is your journey starts from here. Not from what's happening outside, not the results you're going to get, not the cause. It starts from inside and you build from there.
Thank you so much, Nono. That was so informative and we really appreciate you being here. I'm not going to go any further, but I would like to thank the WITS community. From myself, I will be handing over to the Dean of Student Affairs, Mr. Jerome September, to give us our vote of thanks.
Thank you so much. I have two things to do. The one is to thank you, and the second one for the participants who are here to do an advertorial for the next speaker that we have lined up for next week. So I'll do the next speaker last so that hopefully you stay to hear who the next speaker will be. Nono, wow. Let me just be upfront and say, I have never met Nono in my life. The minister, I think it was one of the ministers was hosting a webinar on opportunities in agriculture. And I tuned into that webinar and then was just moved by what Nono had to say, by her contributions, and then kind of became a stalker and just Googled and somehow found the details to be able to connect with her. But thank you so much. This is exactly what these webinars are meant to do. They're meant to make WITS students think really deeply about their own space and contribution, about their own leadership journey, and about them then tapping into the experiences and insights of people who are a couple of steps ahead of them on the journey, for their own self-reflection and learning. And so, Nono, you've given us 4 key things in leadership that I think are takeaways. The one is accountability. So on the journey, being accountable to self, accountable to those you claim to lead, accountable to those you walk the journey with, but important for leaders to be accountable. The second one was around responsibility. And responsibility starting with the self-discipline. So yes, that math or that finance that you don't like, but this process that you're committed to and the discipline to work through it. So having committed yourself to this leadership journey, to being a house committee member, to being an SRC member, to being the leader of a club or a society or whatever it might be, and so being disciplined in that. That came with the self-mastery, so the mastering of self. And you said an important thing around doing the right thing yourself, because it's when you do it yourself that it becomes an easy journey to walk. So as leaders, walking the right path yourself, the integrity of self, so that when you say, hey, Wena Jerome, you are doing the wrong thing, it's because you come from a point of yourself doing the right thing. Okay, so the self-mastery. Then there was this idea of pride and respect, the respect for everyone. The respect not because of the position people hold, but the respect because they are human beings. And so your powerful story on the farm about the workers whose boss you now are, but you have to show them respect, and that's how you also earn their buy-in and their respect. And with that, the pride of having done this, of having the self-pride, the pride of having walked this journey, of having committed to it. And lastly, the potential for impact. And leaders, impact is important. In your journey, how do you as a leader, what is your impact, and what is the impact that your society or your organization have beyond the self? So the idea of impact, which is important. And what I loved, Nono, was all the way through each one of those, two things stood out for me. Connect with others. So where you don't know, put yourself into that room, and even if it means you just sit there and listen because you're busy learning, but connect, learn, push, learn, push. And so connect with others, and together with that was the eagerness to learn that just ran all the way through. So thank you again so much. This was very powerful, very impactful, exactly what we were hoping to do. And as I said to you, when COVID-19 is a slight thing of the past, I look forward to welcoming you to WITS so that we can appreciate you in a much better way. For now, we have to do halala via the virtual space. WITS is, on that note, our next speaker, which will be next week. So we have two exciting speakers lined up. On the 1st of September, we have Professor Shabir Mahdi. You will know that Professor Mahdi is leading the search for a vaccine on COVID-19. So he will come on the 1st of September to speak to you about research about why Africa needs to be involved in finding the solutions, and why this COVID-19 trial is part of what we must do. Then next week, the 26th at 5:30, we have another powerhouse, and that is Mary Vilakazi. She's the Chief Operating Officer of First Rand Bank, amongst a host of other things that she's doing. And I hope that you will join us next week for Mary Vilakazi. That's a big one. And then also Prof. Shabir Mahdi, which is another big one in the series that we are currently running. But thank you very much for having joined us. Thank you, Bukhle, you were fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I also stalked Bukhle, so yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Reshma and Reshal from our marketing and communications team. And thank you to Tembi from my office who have made this possible. And another word of thanks to Nono Sekgotho, our special guest today, and someone whose journey we are inspired by and whom we wish only success and all the beautiful things in this world too. Thank you, everyone. That is the end of our webinar. Thank you.